right, it's time to talk about the search for the next Rutgers athletic director. It's been about a month since Pat Hobbs suddenly resigned. Did a rapid reaction to that news. Also did a episode recently on just the surrounding aftermath, investigation of the gymnastics program, investigation of Hobbs himself. A lot to unpack there if you didn't see those episodes. But this is about the future. This is about the dynamics of the search, things to consider, which continue. It's Rutgers. It's complicated. It's never easy. Less than a week ago, David Wildstein of New Jersey Globe reported that, according to cited three sources, that President Jonathan Holloway is reportedly could tell the Board of Governors, is how he worded it, that he would not look to extend his contract past 2025. That obviously would add a whole nother element to this search for the next AD to replace Hobbs. I'm going to mention some candidates that I think, or names that should be candidates or could be candidates, names worthy of consideration. But really, the overall gist of this is just the importance, obviously, of this hire and how I hope Rutgers handles it. The Board of Governors obviously has a huge role in this. Amy Towers is the head of the Board of Governors. That gives me confidence. That should give Rutgers confidence that Rutgers athletics will continue to be prioritized. Jonathan Holloway has prioritized Rutgers athletics. If he stays, great. If he doesn't, then hopefully you have to believe the Board of Governors will hire a president that also believes in the value of college athletics and understands the dynamics that are changing every day with the NCAA. The House ruling is out there. We don't know what's going to happen there. A judge recently intervened and said they need to redo their agreement because the NCAA wanted to get rid of NIL contributions from collectives and donors. And that is something that if the NCAA doesn't come up with a plan for, the agreement could fall apart. So the timeline of this is wide open. We don't know the timeline. Obviously, if Holloway ultimately does not commit to stay, that opens things up. You know, he was rumored to be reported or is reportedly interested in the Yale job over the summer, did not leave for that. So there's a lot of variables here. Again, we've talked about vertical alignment a lot. The coaches have talked about vertical alignment. That is obviously imperative for this athletic department to take a step forward from the first decade in the Big Ten to now the second decade of the Big Ten. You need everyone pulling in the same direction, and you need top leadership moving things forward. And I think you have that right now. Amy Towers, obviously a tremendous resume, her business experience, acumen, success, and then her philanthropy. Jeff Towers and Amy Towers have been tremendous. They've basically been adoptive parents of Rutgers athletics. We owe so much to them. So having her in charge of the Board of Governors overall has been very supportive of Rutgers athletics. And in terms of how they move forward with the AD search, in terms of what happens with the presidency, there's a lot of unknown factors right now. And in terms of a timeline, there's no rush, right? And especially if this House ruling falls apart, then it doesn't seem like this paying student athletes is going to happen in the following school year. There was a reported budget number of $22 million, and schools would allocate to different programs however they saw fit. Obviously, that requires a leader at the top of the department to help determine that. So if that's not going to happen, that's actually, I think, a little bit of a break in terms of the timeline. And before I forget, I wanted to mention, in terms of candidates, no, I don't agree with fans that think that Tim Pernetti or Sarah Baumgartner will be candidates or would even be interested. Or would be the right fit at this time. Tim Pernetti is the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. I've been a huge advocate of him. I've said Rutgers needs to do something for him in this 10th anniversary of them joining the Big Ten. He was instrumental in doing so. He's was a tremendous ambassador for Rutgers. He's a loyal son. He's a letter winner in football. His wife was a letter winner in lacrosse. He needs to be honored. But I don't think he's going to want to come back. He's a commissioner of a conference. That's a different career path. He's been so successful in TV and everything he's done. And then Sarah Baumgartner is currently the number 2 at Texas, arguably the most dynamic and largest athletic department in the country, along with Florida State and Stanford. And I bring up those programs because if you want to shoot for the moon, obviously you need a budget to go with it. But I don't think Mike Alford at Florida State is realistic. He just signed a contract extension. He's over, but he checks a ton of boxes. He's worked in football at Dallas Cowboys, Cincinnati Bengals. He's worked for ABC in the marketing division. He was the chief fundraiser for Oklahoma for several years. He was the chief fundraiser for Florida State for several years. He worked at Alabama. Florida State's one of the most dynamic athletic departments, 12th in the Directors' Cup last year, overall standings in terms of NCAA championships, performance, always one of the better athletic departments. He's overseeing right now a football facility being built, the stadium renovations. He checks a ton of boxes. He's from the South. I don't think they have much of a shot at all, but that's the type of profile that you want to aim high. And another high-profile athletic director, Stanford, Bernard Muir, different situation, right? They're now in the ACC. They lost the Pac-12. He could be intriguing in terms of and interested in potentially making a move. Now, he was the deputy AD at Notre Dame, so his big football experience there. He was the AD at Georgetown. He was the AD at Delaware. He's been at Stanford for 12 years. They've had tremendous success as an athletic department, 33 NCAA titles, 8 Director Cup titles, so the best athletic department in terms of performance year after year. 97% graduation rate. Obviously, it's Stanford. It deals with a lot of challenges there. I'd say the one knock on him is that football has not been good in several years. David Shaw was really good there for a while. Was not hired by Muir, but they haven't succeeded in the last few years, and basketball struggled at times as well. So that's something to consider. And the fact that, any sitting AD, I think, can Rutgers go out and get a sitting Power 4 AD? So Muir is intriguing. Not perfect. I don't think there is a perfect candidate. Another guy's Martin Germond at UCLA. From 2003 to 2017 was at Michigan State, the associate AD and deputy AD at Ohio State. He was a football administrator for one season when Greg Schiano was at DC at Ohio State. He was the youngest AD ever hired at BC at 37. He's been at UCLA for 4 years now. He brought Nike to UCLA. That's an interesting angle. Rutgers an Adidas school for now. No, I don't think it wasn't ever reported about a long-term contract with Adidas. So that's an interesting angle there. He also, for those that are concerned about basketball, Steve Peichel, his contract buyout is in half now since Hobbs' departure. That was in his contract. Martin Germond was a 2-time captain at UNC Wilmington and was a key part in leading them to the first ever NCAA tournament appearance. So he's got basketball in his blood, but he's a Power 4 guy at heart. I mean, the last 20 years, Michigan State, Ohio State. So he understands fundraising. He understands facilities. He understands NIL now. UCLA. So I think those 3 names right there, and Jarmon's a lot younger, but hey, listen, he makes he's like $1.5 million in salary as well. So what is Rutgers going to do? What are they willing to step up and do? Now, in terms of sitting ADs that aren't at the Power 4 level that I think are worthy of consideration, you have Sean Frazier at Northern Illinois, was a finalist against Julie Herman a decade ago, was not selected, went to NIU, was at Wisconsin under Barry Alvarez for several years before that. Interesting connection. Amy Towers, Wisconsin alumna. I don't know if they have any relationship or not. Barry Alvarez is a legend, and Sean Frazier learned a lot from him, has been very successful at NIU. They obviously just beat Notre Dame in football. They have a very successful athletic department. He's broken fundraising records there, facilities. He's been there a long time. I don't know if he wants to make a move at this point in his career. He's a little bit, he's not a spring chicken. He's not old, but, he's been there a long time. But certainly someone you have to contact. And I think that's the thing. Rutgers has to kick the tires on everybody. Don't go in this and settle. Don't go in this and small time it. This is an opportunity, and Rutgers needs to take care of that opportunity. They need to maximize that opportunity, and the sky should be the limit. Brian White, FAU, obviously hired Dusty May. Tremendous success with basketball, making a Final Four. Also hired Tom Herman in football. Broken fundraising records there for new facilities. Has really made FAU one of the top mid-major programs in the country. Athletic departments, you have to call him. And then another name, Jason Donnelly. He's at Furman currently. Was the chief fundraiser at Villanova for over 10 years. Obviously, there's a little bit of a lack of football background there, although Furman is one of the better FCS football programs. Very good FCS athletic department. Also from New Jersey, Colonia, worked for USA Basketball, was even the commissioner for Morgan Wooten, high school basketball legend DeMatha, for his camps. I like candidates to have different experience, but he doesn't have, outside of Villanova, he doesn't have Power 4 football experience. So that is certainly an obstacle here. And I think the dynamic of football, basketball, we don't know 3 years from now what athletics departments are going to look like at the power level based on, if schools have to pay student athletes, whether you believe it or not. Figuring that out, and then NIL, believing in NIL is such a huge part of this. That's why, the Rutgers Rant, shout out to them. They mentioned Greg Brown as a possibility, CEO of Motorola, former head of Board of Governors, totally out of the box business idea. You also have Joe Odiguardi, has been the CFO at Ohio State Athletic Department for 2015. So I think Brown and him are interesting ideas from a business perspective, especially from an athletic department that's been in the red for so long. We don't know how athletic departments may look 3 years from now. But all the financial parts, right, paying student athletes, NIL, that has to be a priority with this new AD. And then in terms of, obviously, Passari right now in a huge opportunity as the interim AD. Jerry Carino writing a great article that he deserves an opportunity to throw his hat in the ring and be considered. Scott Goodell, Steve Peichel have said really good things about him. Obviously, Knights of the Raritan, he's pledged his support, talking about Rutgers Athletics being a full partner in NIL with them. That is huge. That's a huge change of pace from Pat Hobbs. Passari has a huge opportunity going into this year. And I think there should be confidence he's going to do a good job. He survived 3 athletic directors at Rutgers. In terms of Tim Pernetti, who I love and left under tough circumstances, Julie Herman, now Pat Hobbs. Anyone that said, you have to clean house and get rid of him too, you don't really know what you're talking about. Respectfully, he's beloved in the athletic department. He does a great job. If anyone knows how to run the department, it's him. Marco Battaglia gets thrown out there by some fans. Obviously, a top fundraiser for the R Fund, legendary football player at Rutgers, one of the best tight ends in college football history. I mean, talk about a brand ambassador. Doesn't have the operations side. So those 3 names, I think internally are interesting. And I think, Passari, Battaglia, Brown. Again, the dynamics of the president, what's going to happen there. You still have to shoot for the moon. And whoever you do bring in, if you do go internally, I think those 3 names are the obvious ones. But the point is, let's go back to vertical alignment. Everyone has to be working together. And those 3 names I just mentioned should all be integral in the next phase of Rutgers athletics, whatever roles they may be. Hopefully they all stay if they don't get chosen, if they're even interested. And whoever they do bring in has to understand Rutgers, and that doesn't mean they have to have prior experience at Rutgers, but it's a dynamic place. It's a complicated place. We know this. This is a prove-it moment for Rutgers to show they're serious about becoming one of the best athletic departments in the Big Ten and in the country. It's right in front of us. And maybe we have a new president with it. Remains to be seen. But this is a pivotal moment for Rutgers. I think I mentioned all the names I wanted to mention. I'm sure there's other names out there. There's plenty of other names out there I didn't mention. The vertical alignment from the top, BOG, presidency, athletic department. This needs to be someone with sincerity, with seriousness, and with vision, and that can lead the program forward. And any stone should be unturned. This is so critical for Rutgers athletics. But I think, Bernard Muir at Stanford, Martin Germond, UCLA, again, Alfred at Florida State. I love the profile. I think it's probably unrealistic, but, all these guys are over $1 million. And then you have guys like Brian White, Sean Frazier, Donnelly, kind of the next tier down in terms of experience. I think all potentially could be really good. Talked about those internal options. It's not funny, but Diana Sabo was a name that I was intrigued by. Former Ohio State, was there under Gene Smith for a long time, worked at the Big Ten. Now the AD at Utah State. This week, They get served papers from the DOJ. They're under investigation for Title IX violations. Now, I don't know how much she's involved. She's only been there a year, but can't imagine she'd be under consideration if she ever was. But that was someone I was going to mention. So things are going to change, right? But having a search firm, having a board of governors that's serious about getting this right and about moving this athletic department forward is the key. And I think we have to have confidence as fans that we are moving into a new era. It's the second decade of the Big Ten. And I have faith in the decision makers that they're going to get this right. We'll see who emerges. It's a fascinating year. It's a fascinating time. And I hope this maybe made you think a little bit. And as Rutgers fans, we want to see what's best for the university and what's best for the athletic department. So really make this a serious hire. Resources, everything. It's time to put everything into it and get it right. Thank you so much for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful Podcast.